This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon or morning, as the case may be. I realize some of you all it's before noon. It is exactly high noon my time here in hot San Antonio, Texas. Welcome to the Fellows Nomination Process webinar. For those of you that I don't know, I am Brigadier General Retired Patrice Melanson, Academy of Fellows Executive Committee Vice Chair for Internal Affairs. I appreciate each of you attending today, and we look forward to the discussion and to answering hopefully all of your questions. Next slide, please. So here's what we're going to cover today. Talk a little bit about the fellows role, talk a lot about the nomination form, and then cover the review phases, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. Next slide, please. So what exactly is a fellow, you might be wondering? Well, I looked up in Wikipedia, which of course we know is the font of all knowledge. Wikipedia says fellows are often the highest grade of membership of many professional associations or learned societies. Now, SAME's definition has evolved over the last several years. Originally, when the fellows designation first started, it really was based on past involvement, past achievement. It was sort of like an Oscar or a Grammy Award for what you had done in the past. Now we really have shifted the focus. We are still looking for your past achievement and past involvement. Certainly, I think that speaks to what your capabilities are, but we're really looking more towards your potential to step up. And it's almost, oh, sorry, before I move on, I'm seeing from somebody, if you are not speaking, and right now I should be the only one speaking, please mute your mic. That's the little microphone looking thing at the bottom. Make sure that it is not highlighted and it's got a line through it. That way we won't have a lot of background noise. And also for bandwidth considerations, please leave your cameras off unless you're speaking. Okay, perfect. So back on track. So as I mentioned, in the past, it was really just focused on what you had done in the past. We really are looking more for let's demonstrate what you've done in the past, but really demonstrate your potential for future involvement and almost a recommitment to the society as a whole. As you'll see here from the fellows charge, it really is to support the mission and the strategic plan. A big focus of fellows is that role model and mentoring, and really supporting mentoring in a variety of forms. As the society's grown, we have a variety of ways that you can serve as a mentor, either on a very localized scale or on more of a regional or national scale. Supporting our posts, because we really are a society of very vibrant and involved posts. And then that underlying quality or characteristic of being patriotic and respectful. Today it seems like there are so many instances of lack of respect, and so we really want to really be mindful about that. We've talked some about diversity and inclusion, so really that aspect of being respectful is quite important to us. We really anticipate that many fellows are going to continue to go on to greater levels of leadership within SAME, either at the regional or even at the national role. Not everybody, but we do anticipate that our fellows are going to progress through the society. Next slide, please. So our nomination form, over the last probably 4 years, we have made some large and some small changes to the form. That was in response to feedback that we got, our after action reviews, and some lessons learned. 3 key points that I want to stress here is we're looking at 10 years of service versus just 10 years of membership. And that service really equates to active membership and active engagement. I want to stress that this is not an automatic thing. It's not like you hit 10 years of membership and boom, you're ready to be nominated as a fellow. That is not what this is at all. It is more than just attending meetings and going to a couple of activities during the year. It really is looking at consistent and sustained activity and support of the society and our mission and our strategic plan. You can be active only at the post level and still make fellow. I know a lot of people feel like, well, if I haven't been a regional something or on the national staff or on a committee of interest, that I don't have a place in fellows. That is not the case. But I want to stress that, this is a nomination and a selection process, and you are going to be scored against your peers who may have done things at the regional and national level. Now, that's not to say that, as I said, you can be active only at the post level and still make fellow. But if you've been at the post level only and you've done sort of the same post board officer role for the last 15 years, that is probably not going to be enough. I don't want to say that as an ultimatum, but this is kind of like a promotion board, and you're going to be compared to your peers. The other thing that we see here on the slide is impact. So really focus on not only what you did, but what was the impact? How did you improve a process or a program? Why should we be interested in what you did? What was that impact? And again, back to commitment. You may have to have 15 years of membership to demonstrate 10 years of committed service and active engagement. And that's fine. That is not okay. It's not going to be a ding that you've been a member for 20 years, but you can only demonstrate, let's say, 12 years of active, engaged service to the society. That's fine. I know a lot of our military folks do have gaps in their participation for a variety of reasons, and that really is all okay. Next slide, please. Yep, there we go. So the nomination form, I believe that Kathy posted in the link, and I should have mentioned this before I started. We have posted the nomination form. We've changed it just a little bit from last year. So if you would like to pull that up now and have that to follow along as we go along, that would be fine, and that might be sort of helpful. I'll try to talk a little bit to it. So part one is nominee information. Obviously, we need the information that you give us to match SAMI's record. If there is a disconnect, please reach out to us. Please reach out to Kathy, and we will work. Oh, sorry. Let me jump in. I see from Mary Anderson, does active service need to be continuous? No, it does not. As I mentioned, there may be gaps, particularly with military. You may have a couple of year gap for whatever the reason might be. So it does not have to be continuous. Great. You're welcome, Mary. So back to part one of the nomination form. If there is a disconnect in your information and what's in your individual SAMI record, please work with Kathy off and we will get that sorted out. But you need to do that earlier rather than later. If you come to Kathy on October 1st and the packets are due on October 3rd, probably going to be a problem. Kathy also is just saying log into your profile to fix your information. That gets into know how to update your own information. So if years of membership do not match your SAMI records, explain what happened. I know in my case, I was an individual military member. I then was under a sustaining member with my employee, and then I went back to an individual member. So, there may be things that you just gotta just put it in there and let us know. 10 years of membership is a go, no go. That does not need to be continuous membership. As I mentioned, I was under one number as an individual, then a different number as a sustaining member, back to a different number as an individual member again. But you have to have 10 years of membership as the basic minimum. So if you don't have 10 years membership, keep on keeping on. You'll get there eventually. This year, we have made it mandatory for the nominator and the nominee to both check the box affirming that they have either participated in the webinar today or viewing the webinar sometime after today, but before the packet is turned in. So during that preparation, I realize that there may be some folks that have not been identified that are potential nominees. That is fine. We will have this posted online and you can go back and review this webinar to get the information. And this is on the honor system. We're not going to go back and check to see if you logged in. You know, you really, this is on the honor system. That's all I'm going to say. Next slide.
Patrice, Jim had a good question. You talked about membership not having to be continuous. Does the engagement have to be continuous?
No, the engagement also, as I mentioned, if you have gaps in your engagement, you know, that's not a problem, but you do need to show 10 years of engaged service. Like I said, it may take you 15, 18 years to get that 10 years of engaged service. And that's not going to be a ding on you. That's not going to be minus points because you weren't continually involved. There are a variety of reasons for military folks and for the civilians, you know, folks that are just in industry. There are a variety of reasons where you might have a break in either your membership or your engaged service. So that is not a problem, but you do have to demonstrate. And, you know, typically that demonstration is by, I served as, you know, the post treasurer for this 2 years, and then I was the post president, and then maybe you had a couple of years off, and then you came back and did, you know, something else, and then maybe you were a regional something. So that's all fine. Mike Rusty has said, how far back do records go? Kathy, can you answer that real quickly?
I will find out.
Okay, so we'll come back to that question. Thank you for asking that. We'll come back with that. Okay, back to the form. So part 2 of the nomination form is the Fellows Action Statement. Those of you who have seen the form before, this last year was the Fellows Commitment Statement. And it was really towards the end of the form. We've moved it up in the form to emphasize the importance of this. You know, we really want to know what's your passion. There are so many aspects of SAME that you might be interested or passionate about. So, you know, it should reflect your passion. Now, I will tell you that you might be passionate in several areas, and that's great. I love, love, love that. But we ask you for this action statement to pick one area and kind of one thing that you want to do in the next year or 2 years. It doesn't mean you can't contribute in other areas. It also doesn't mean that you can only do one thing. However, look at this kind of as a recommitment activity. So as you start your new journey with SAME as a fellow, what's the thing that you're going to start that journey with? And I ask that you guys think about trying to have it a bit focused, and tell us what you want to do or what you intend to do, and a little bit of how you plan to do that. As I said, this is just the start of your new journey with SAME as a fellow. As honorable as it might seem, please don't tell me that you're going to solve world peace. You know, we have a lot of folks that are very broad with what they want to do. And I don't want to underplay, you know, we want strategic thinkers. We absolutely need that in the society. But I ask you, as you look at your broad strategy of what you want to contribute, try to focus in on one activity or one thing that in the next year to 2 years, maybe even 3 years, you want to do. It is going to be right in the investiture ceremony. So I know this past year I worked individually with folks to kind of wordsmith. And words matter. A lot of people like to say they're going to engage this group or that group or the other group. What exactly does that mean? How are you going to engage? So again, focus on the what you want or intend to do and a little bit of the how you plan to do it. I like to sort of think about a measurable aspect of that. In some cases, that's not necessarily applicable or appropriate. But again, what do you want to do and how do you plan to do it? So if you have questions about that, write them down. We'll get them at the end. Thank you. So next bullet. Or sorry, next slide. So part 3A and B is service to SAME. The first part 3A is just a bulleted list. I repeat, bulleted list. I don't want a paragraph on each office that you held, but typically a bullet of either the office, or if you had some sort of leadership role. Let's say you were the point of contact for some sort of a STEM activity or a camp, or I know in San Antonio we do Operation Float a Soldier. So if you had the lead for some aspect of that, so just bulletized list, preferably with the years. If you did it more than 1 year, give us the range of years, and then in reverse chronological order, i.e. the most recent first, going down to the oldest one, and go back as far as you would like to go. Again, this is where we're kind of starting to see that 10 years of active engaged service. 3B is a detailed expansion of that list in 3A. For each of those offices or roles, what did you do again, and why should we care? What was the impact of that? We recommend a challenge, effort, impact format. I'll talk about that in a minute on the next bullet. But what did you do? If you want to talk about, you led a team to do X, Y, and Z, that's great, but what did you specifically do? And we don't need a bunch of buzzwords. Really cut to the chase and focus on the impact. And if you can, give us sort of a measure of the impact. If it was you increased participation by 20% or whatever that might be. Jim Donahue asked about a maximum number of words. Yes, on the form, it does give you the number of words that we ask you to keep to that. I don't want, we had probably 40 something packages last year. We have to read all of those packages. So please don't give us War and Peace. Again, be focused, challenge, effort, impact. Again, this is where we're going to see that 10 years of involved service. Spend most of your words on the impact. How did your actions improve the situation? As I mentioned, if you have a measurement, so much the better, but that is certainly not required. Next slide. So challenge, effort, impact. So challenge, what was the change that needed to happen? What situation needed to be addressed for whatever the reason? What was that challenge? Efforts. What steps did you take? What activity did you start? What idea did you bring to bear that made a difference? And then impact. What positive impact did your actions have? Again, really spend your words on the impact part. How did you improve it? Next slide.
Patrice, Corey had a question for 3A, the list. Should you list all the positions you served in, and then 3B limit it to those you had the most impact on, or should they match?
I think as long as if you have more than 10 years of positions, and you're looking at word count, then I would say go pick the 10 years worth of the most impactful. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a balancing act for some people. Again, if you're concise with your words, hopefully you can get more than 10 years worth, but you do not necessarily have to match each position to an entry in 3B. I hope that helps. Okay, moving on to part 4. Again, we have an A and B. This is focused on service to the profession. Again, 4A is single bulleted list, kind of the same ROE as for 3A and 3B. I will say in 4A, you can include publications, but I ask you to limit it to 5. We don't want to have 2 pages worth of every publication you've ever done. So if you've got a bunch of them, submit the 5 that you think were sort of most impactful or that best demonstrate your expertise, I guess. 4B, again, the detailed expansion of the list with the challenge, effort, impact format. Please, this should not look like a job description. We've had sections in this before that look like a job description. Glenn Goddard says, as you probably know, DOGIG rules that SAME is a non-federal entity, severely restricts participation by a senior leader in key role as an endorsement of a non-federal entity. How should we represent the fact that a senior leader GO could not hold a key position? Glenn, honestly, I don't know that I'm all that worried about that. That senior leader can participate in different ways, and hopefully that senior leader has been active since they were a lieutenant or captain, when they could hold things like post president or serve on a community of interest. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Ann. I just wanted to jump in there, and I agree with what you said, and I just really want to echo that. This kind of goes back to a point you made earlier. Despite what some people think, you do not have to have been a post president. You do not have to have been on a former COI. There really are no set rules like that. So I genuinely think that you can be super active in your post. You could be on a couple committees. You could attend a bunch of meetings and participate. That will not hold you back if you don't have any specific key positions.
Thank you, Ann, for adding that. Yes, absolutely what Ann said. There are a lot of other ways that you can contribute and be active and involved and not be post president or national president. So, okay, Glenn, I saw it. Thank you. So I'm thinking that that we got that. Let me see what else you're competing against each other. Okay, so yeah, Glenn says these packages are scored against a requirement, but these candidates are competing against each other per se. Yes, this is similar to a promotion board. Now I will tell you I'm going to defer that, Glenn, if you're okay. I'm going to defer that when I talk about the phases of the process. So we'll get back to that. If I don't specifically answer your question, please ask it again. The last thing I want to say about 4A and 4B is that I do encourage you to include civic or community involvement, but in this part, please try to keep it to something that is maybe related to the engineering profession in some form or fashion. I will talk later on about awards and recognition, and non-engineering kinds of activities can go in there. So don't hesitate. If you are on, let's say your group that does trash pickup or something along that lines, or you do like STEM activities with a different organization, include that sort of civic and community involvement there. Next slide, please. Okay, so part 5, awards, honors, and other recognition and service. So this can be SAME awards, military awards, civic, professional, community, and it can be anything. You can include board service for boards that are completely, that are not engineering related. It can be you've served on your HOA board. You've done volunteer work with your church. If you're putting military awards in there, please limit them to the top 3. I don't need to know that you got an achievement award when you were a second lieutenant. As honorable as that is, we ask that you just pick the top 3. Again, specific to what you did. If it was a team effort, talk about what you did as part of the team. For all of these, please give us the name of the award and then a description of the service you provided or the award you received with an explanation of the activities that were recognized. Unless it's a semi-national award, don't assume that we know what the award is for. I've seen some packages with, like the Mid-Maryland Post, SAME, Top Dude Award. I don't really know what that is. So if it's a semi-national award, it's kind of safe that we'll know what it is. But if it's not a national award, please give us a little bit about what that award is for. As I remembered, board service, HOAs, church activities, Little League, coaches, again, what did you do? And this helps us get a better sense of the whole person. Next slide. Society knowledge. This has gotten a lot of discussion. There's been some consternation with this. We've talked about, do we even have the questions? Do we give points or not points? Believe it or not, there were some folks who got several questions completely wrong. Completely wrong. Our thought and what we decided on is that fellows, being the most active and engaged mentors within the society, should have correct and relevant information regarding the entities and the operations of SAME. So we think it's important. And so there is a reason to have this. It will focus on national direction and strategy and some of the operations of the society. And they're basically open book questions. There are some of them that are open-ended. Treat them as short essay, but remember that less is more. I believe on this part, we may also have some word limits, word limitations, but all of this is spelled out on the form. And again, if you have questions, please, please, please ask us. But it's open book. Before we had questions that had like 3 or 4 parts and you could get partial credit, we've decided that each question is going to be X amount of points and it's either all points or no points. We are going to update the questions. The last couple of years, I think they've been the same questions. We're going to update them. And while this is open book, please don't just copy and paste into the form. Or if you do copy and paste, don't be obvious about it. Take some time. If you can call a friend, you can talk with, one of your buddies or your post president if you aren't exactly sure. So Lori says, which book? Basically, you can go to the website and Google it. But again, please don't copy and paste from the website into the form. Put it in your own words. The citation. So while they are not read at the investiture, I missed that part with the action statement. Those will be read at the investiture ceremony. So we're going to probably work with you on the wording on that. The citation we may use for marketing and communications, and with the citation and with the action statement, we may edit those for grammar and word count just for readability. Next slide. So this is the last part of the form, and this is the endorsement information part. The RFPOCs really have to get involved. They are key at the start of the process. They are going to make a go, no-go decision. RFPOCs, if you're on the call, we really need you all to step up and respectfully and gently let somebody know, hey, I don't think you're quite ready. As I mentioned before, it's not that you've got 10 years and boom, you're automatically going to be going for fellow. That's fine. But if you're a potential nominee and your RFPOC says, hey, I think we maybe need to, give you another year or two, and hopefully that RFPOC will tell you, I suggest you think about doing X, Y, or Z, and maybe talk to you about what your areas of interest are. And maybe they recommend that you participate in a community of interest, or get a leadership role in a community of interest. So they really are going to be the go, no go folks. Do not wait till the last minute, please. Your endorsers need time and they need information and knowledge. The 3 endorsements that we're going to require: the nominator, who has to be a fellow, and then your RVP and your post president. The RVP and the post president don't have to be fellows. The nominator must be a fellow. In the case of the RVP, you can substitute the deputy RVP. I know many of the regions now they have a regional fellows a regional vice president, and they have a deputy that's helping them kind of for succession planning. So either one of those is fine. If you know your deputy RVP better than your RVP, that's fine. I will tell you, if you don't know your RFPOC or your RVP or deputy RVP at all, I would suggest maybe you're not ready. That's just my opinion. That's not a hard and fast rule. And again, while we don't want to exclude those who have only served at the post level, you are going to be competing with those who maybe have served at a regional or national level. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an analogy that hopefully you all can relate to. So many of you know that I was a reservist for many years. Your traditional reservist is somebody who does their 1 week in a month, and they do their 2-week annual tour, and that is it. And they do that for 20 or 30 years and they retire. And that is absolutely full-on honorable service, and it's a form of service that we absolutely need. The reserves are supposed to be ready to augment in a time of war. And so they go and do their weekends, and they do their training, and they go do their 2-week deployment to wherever. That's fine. But when it comes time for a promotion board, or let's say selection for a school, in residence PME, those kinds of things, when you look at somebody who's just done their 1 week in a month, they've done their 2-week annual tour, versus somebody who's done maybe 8, 9, or 10 weeks of duty in a year, and they've done 6-month deployment to the Middle East, or 6-month deployment somewhere to backfill for an active duty person. There's going to be weight with those. So you just need to be aware that you're going to be scored against your peers. We can address alternates for endorsements on a case-by-case basis, but you need to do that earlier rather than later. The endorsement letters, we talked about assigning points to that, decided that really was not appropriate. But again, it gives us more of a sense of the whole person, and that's kind of what we're trying to look at. Next slide. So the calendar. You'll notice 3 of those dates are in bold. Those are hard and fast dates at the national level. July, early August, nominators should be getting draft packages together to their RFPOCs. That RFPOC is probably going to maybe want to talk to you about some of your nominations. You need to give some time for that. The 5th of August, RFPOCs have to submit a list of only the nominee name to the national office. We don't need to have a draft packet. We just need the name. And so the RFPOC is going to have had time to look at, what the folks have done, impact, that kind of thing, and made that go or no-go decision. And again, if you get deferred, please do not be disheartened or dismayed about that. That is not the kiss of death. It's not the end of the world. And let that RFPOC work with you to help you strengthen your activities and come up with a really strong package. We're recommending toward the end of August, have that complete draft nomination packet set to the RFPOCs. RFPOC is Regional Fellows Point of Contact. Thank you, Lori. So you've got a Regional Vice President RVP, and then a Regional Fellows Point of Contact RFPOC. So toward the end of August, complete packages are due to the RFPOC. kind of by mid-September, that RFPOC should have reviewed packages and potentially sent comments back, recommendations for strengthening the package, again, helping to paint the picture of what that nominee did, what the impact was, why we should care, kind of a thing. So again, be sure that you don't wait till the last minute to put slap a packet together. You need to spend some time on that. The 3rd of October is a hard and fast deadline. The completed packets are due to the same national office. And then our goal is by the end of December, really, the goal is by the middle of December, kind of before the holidays hit, we will let nominees and nominators know about acceptance or deferral. Next slide. So the review phases. Phase 1, this is really where the RFPOCs are the lead, and that's where you earn your regional fellows point of contact pay. Yay! Yay, volunteers. No, seriously, that's where the RFPOCs really are going to have the heavy lift. As I mentioned, they are going to make that go, no-go decision and defer if appropriate. They're also going to be looking at format and completeness. Again, we've got 8 folks that are reviewing 40 plus packages in a fairly short time. So again, that concise wording, what was the problem? What did you do? What was the impact? Is very helpful for us as we're looking at and scoring the packages. Again, feedback on the content, focus on the impact. And RFPOCs, I want to emphasize again, talk with the post president, talk with the RVP to get a good sense of whether or not that nominee is really ready. While the RFPOCs make the call of go, no go, a nominee can have anybody review their package to help them with the wording and painting that picture. Next slide. Phase 2 begins the 3rd of October. Oh, nope, back up one, Kathy. So phase 2, 3rd of October, all the packets get sent to the national office and they confirm the go, no go. Our goal is to have 0 packets rejected. If the RFPOCs did their thing in phase 1 and weeded out those folks that really were not ready, we should not have an issue. But we do the national, and that's Kathy Office is our national office liaison, and she will go through and do that initial review of all the packages. Next slide. So phase 3, this is where each packet is reviewed and scored by everyone on the AOFXC. That's the chair, the deputy, and then 6 vice chairs. So there's 8 people total. We have a kickoff meeting before we start this, and we talk about the criteria. We ask questions. How do we, let's make sure that we're kind of on the same page as to how we're looking at all the different aspects of the packet. We did make a decision this last year that for the questions, the vice chair internal, that's me, will score those. And if I have any doubt about an answer, if it's right or wrong, then I will call in the national staff and we will make the call on that. So that's the one part of it that gets scored basically by the vice chair internal. But the rest of the package are scored by all 8 of us. We really talk about being consistent in how you score packages. Another thing I'll say is if you know someone very, very well and don't think that you can necessarily be really objective, we've had, in fact, there were 2 people last year that I recused myself from scoring because I knew them really well and I would have given them, 10 out of 10 on everything. So we really try to keep it very impartial and really score the package. Again, your package needs to reflect what you've done and why it's important. Some of the scoring is subjective, but again, we really talk about the criteria and really talk about being consistent in the scoring. As I mentioned, the packets are scored individually, and then we do meet in person to kind of rack and stack and draw the cut line. We do, if we have someone that scored somebody really high and somebody else scored that same person really low, we have a discussion about that. What did each of the people see that maybe somebody else didn't see? And so we really, we have a lot of discussion. It's a full day. It's a long day. So we do, and then, we go back and forth about where is the cut line. Next slide, please. In phase 4, the recommendations are presented by the AOF chair to the SAME president. In this phase, we may talk with some of the national leadership team. And I will tell you that the national president can and has asked for additional analysis of where we put the cut line. So, I feel very comfortable that this gets a lot of scrutiny before we make the final decision. All the nominees are going to receive notification by the AOF chair with participation by the regional fellows POC for that individual person. The intent, as I said, is to make notifications by mid-December. If something happens and we are not able to make those notifications by mid-December, we will defer until after the holidays. We did have a situation where we were making notifications right before the holidays, and it was kind of a bummer, for folks that, they're going into the Christmas season and they get bad news. So we definitely don't want to do that. So the goal is mid-December. If we are not able to do that for whatever reason, and there's a variety of reasons of things that can happen, we will defer until after the holidays. Next slide. Additional considerations. So the primary objective is we're looking to strengthen the academy. We are looking for new fellows that are committed to sustained involvement. As I mentioned, that action statement is sort of that first activity that you're going to take as a brand new fellow. Format and word count matter. Be concise. We don't need a bunch of flowery, I'm going to solve world peace. We want to know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, what you did before, what the impact was. More words does not necessarily a better packet make. Again, focus on impact. Why did what you did or plan to do matter? And let your reviewers help you with the format and the wording. Again, we need to be able to see the value to score it appropriately. Bottom line, we want to understand that you've been involved and are ready to continue and maybe even step up your involvement. So next slide. We know that things happen, and if you have extenuating circumstances for any aspect, please reach out to Kathy. If you have questions or want to bounce something off of someone, please feel free to contact me. You have our email addresses. And we stand ready to answer questions. Next slide. So that wraps it up. We've got 15 minutes. I will open the floor to questions. I think that Ann Edie, who spoke up earlier, she is our vice chair of the AOFXC, and she's with us. She has done this many times, and she's available to help. I think at this point, Kathy, are there questions that we got in the chat that you can, that I haven't answered that maybe we can start with?
Hey, Patrice, or Kathy, if you don't mind, while you're looking that up, this is Ann Avey. Before we start losing people, I do want to clarify just one thing that was mentioned. Corey, I think it was a question of yours about 3A and 3B, do they need to match? And I might have just not heard Patrice well. So it says on the nomination form for 3B, the very first words in bold and underlined, for all positions listed in 3A, describe the challenge, initiative, and effort. So
okay, thank you, Ann. Yeah,
you can choose what you include. You don't have to include everything you've done. We want to see 10 years worth of involvement. But if you put it in 3A, it needs to be in 3B. Those two do need to match. So again, just to clarify, I might have misunderstood that. Couple of other points that Patrice, just to kind of build on what Patrice was saying, don't hesitate to reach out with questions. We genuinely are trying to build our academy and not keep people out. I would say that, you know, every year somebody has a situation where, hey, this is the situation with my endorser. This is why I can't get this person. Can we come up with an alternative? We want to work with you to figure out a way to make that work. If there's, you know, situations or exceptions, again, please just reach out. We will work with you to figure out how we can make things work. And I think that's all that I had. So Kathy, I will turn it over to you if you have any questions there that we need to answer.
Patrice, I think you might have covered this, but I'm not sure. Glenn had asked if the candidates are, he knows that they're having to meet a requirement, but are they competing against each other?
In effect, yes, you're going to be scored against your peers. We don't have a min or max number. Like, we don't say, okay, we can only bring in 20 fellows each year, or we can only bring in X percent of the nominations that we receive. We don't have any sort of criteria or target number of fellows to bring in each year. But yes, you are competing against, well, and I don't even know if competing is the right word.
Sorry, Patrice. What I was thinking is, you aren't competing in terms of, we do not look at Patrice's packet versus Ann versus Kathy. What we do is we look at everybody's individually, we score them, we have this big matrix, and then we see where the natural kind of cut line falls.
Right.
So
that's a good way to put
the
it.
overall score, I would say, is compared, but they are not directly compared to each other.
Correct.
That is the answer that I wanted to hear, because the other way would be a pretty big diversion from what we've had in the past. And so every package is scored on its own merits based on your criteria. And then you look at where is the natural line where the package, there might be a gap in the numbers. And so it makes sense that those folks above that line are inducted, those below are not. So that makes sense to me, and that I just didn't want to. I mean, I don't want people to think that Patrice's package and Ann's package are being compared against each other. They're being compared against the basic criteria, and then scored. We look at the scores and determine, okay, here's where the line is. That makes perfect sense to me, and so that's the way I understand it to be. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So that ties into a question that Lori asked about how many applicants and how many get accepted. Kathy would have the exact numbers. I can say over the last 5 years, we've had anywhere between 40, 70. I would say on average, though, 40 to 50. And that's where that, as far as how many are accepted or how many are passed through, I am just amazed at how that cut line, it moves every year, but I don't think that we could say, honestly, we could give you the actual percentages, but there's no trend to it. It really is. It just seems every single year there is some natural cut line that is just amazes me. But I would say more than not do get in, if that helps. I don't know, Lori, if, again, that's a very general answer, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and it is, Ann has done this many more years than I have, but as I understand it, every year it has been, there's sort of a natural, yep, that looks about right. And as I said, we did have the national president, Mark Hanley, did ask Charlie. So Charlie and I spoke and looked at, just below the cut line, and did a little bit of analysis, and we felt very comfortable in going back to Mark and saying, yes, we feel like we got the cut line in the right spot. I just saw somebody pop up saying you do not need to be an engineer to be a fellow. That is absolutely correct. We have a lot of folks that are more kind of marketing, BD, scientists, a lot of scientists. So yes, that is a very good question statement. You do not need to be an engineer to be a fellow.
So Patrice, just one question that I don't think we covered and maybe doesn't pertain to everybody, but can you talk a little bit about resubmitting? You know, if you have submitted in the past and maybe you didn't make fellow and you're resubmitting, what should you know, and anything you want to say about that?
So yes, so for resubmittals, we do specifically talk about, you know, which packages are resubmittals. You know, I will tell you that if you were asked to resubmit, you know, we're going to expect that your package is going to be a little bit different than it was the previous year when you weren't selected. So I would encourage you, if you're not selected, talk with your RFPOC, talk with your RVP, you know, maybe even talk with your president about, you know, what, in some cases, it's a case of the write-up was not that good, and we didn't really understand, you know, what it was that you specifically did and what the impact was. So sometimes it's repackaging and doing a better job at presenting, you know, the challenge, effort, impact. And in other cases, it may be that, you know, your RFPOC or your RVP may say, you know, let's try to get you involved in, you know, something particular and have you, you know, kind of let's have you participate in that and get, you know, another strong chunk of involvement. So I hope that helps.
And Jim, yes, you need to watch the webinar. So we will be posting the recording and the slides on the How to Nominate a Fellow webpage, which is also linked from the AOF webpage. It's the same link that I included in the chat. So you really need to listen to the webinar in addition to looking at the slides.
Right. Yeah. I would say, please don't check that you watched the webinar if all you did was download the slides and looked at the slides. You will not have gotten all of the content that way. So yes, they need to watch the webinar. And again, it's on the honor system. So.
Not seeing anything else.
Patrice, I just have one more thing then, and I don't want to keep.
Come on.
We still have a few more minutes. So I did just want to say, I'm sure people enjoyed a change of pace from hearing my voice for the last hour and hearing Patrice. So thank you, Patrice. But one thing that I think is important, the executive committee, we look at this process literally year round. So we're looking at nominations from October through December. We jump right away into an after action review. We do it internally. We reach out to, you know, RVPs or various groups. We spend the entire spring going back, looking at the nomination form, looking at our process. We've made changes, a lot of changes based on the input we've got. So we're listening to what you guys are saying. And then we jump into this webinar, and then before you know it, it's time for nominations again. So it literally is a year-round process. And I would welcome, you know, we want our process to be transparent. So I can tell you firsthand that we're listening. If you have any suggestions or any comments, good or bad, please feel free to pass those on anytime. But I can tell you just, you know, again, personally, I can tell you that we are putting a lot into this process. There's a lot that goes into the way things are worded, the way things we, you know, evaluate. So we've got a great group of folks working on this. So just want to thank all of them.
Thanks, Ann. And I do see a question in here. What if the nominee is a post president? That's one of those situations where we'd ask you to call Kathy. Probably what we would do is we would say, get an endorsement from the past post president. But again, you know, Kathy can work with you all to figure out what makes the most sense if the nominee is a post president or an RVP or deputy RVP. If there are any folks that have a question that didn't get answered, if you want to, Kathy, can they raise their hand in here or not? I don't know with this.
No, you can, if you want to ask a question without putting it in the chat, feel free to turn your camera on or just speak up. Looks like that's about it.
Okay, again, Kathy, if you'll scroll back to the slide with our emails on it one last time. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Kathy and I will both take any questions that you have and try to help you as much as we can.
And just really quick, extenuating circumstances do not pertain to being late in submitting your form.
No. Thank you for that clarification. No, that is more like, you know, who can I have do my my endorsement is probably the biggest the biggest extenuating circumstance. Okay, hearing nothing, and I see a lot of folks saying thank you and signing off. I will let you all get back to your day, and I'm giving you back 3 minutes. Hooray! Thanks, guys. Have a fabulous, fabulous rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrice.
You're welcome. Thank you, Anne. Appreciate your chiming in.